People are not too busy for coffee. We lost that, right? During that time where we weren't, and during pandemic time, we weren't in front of people.
Do you need to have the buy-in first, or can you help people see that reality? Because I also feel like it's their choice. How can you teach people?
And they all said, Akash, you should start a business. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about starting a business. I don't have an MBA. I've never done this before in my life. I got rejected about 100 times plus.
Well, what am I supposed to do now? So should I keep growing? Should I maybe move on to a vertical? Should I even switch industries?
We can't just fight because, oh, we're gonna be the most money here, you're gonna come here. No, you have to wanna be here. If you don't raise your hand, no one's gonna know your need you wanting help.
That's one of the things that for me was changed my perspective. Welcome to the E-Revolution. Hey everybody, this is Tony Selvaggio. Welcome to E-Revolutionary, the podcast where we make this podcast with refurbished technology. And today we have a very, very good friend of mine, my first mentor when I came to Tampa Bay, the great Aakash Patel. How are you doing?
Good, Tony. Thank you so much for having me on.
Man, so I'm not even going to read all of the amazing things that you're doing, but if you really want to understand what happens in a community, you have to look at the greater ecosystem in spaces. Spaces between business and government, spaces between ideas and execution, and spaces where good intentions either turn into real impact or get lost in the middle of all that chaos. Akash lives right in that space. Thank you so much for everything that you do, and thank you for being here, man.
It's an honor. It's so good to see your growth. It's so good to consider your friend today, and what you're doing with the podcast, I think is awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. This community has been amazing. If anybody understands the power of community, it's definitely you. And to get started, I wanted to anchor us in that framework that allowed you to create the foundation where you stand today. There's something in how you connect the dots. There's something in how you see community. How did that happen? How did everything evolve to how it is today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you know, I graduated college at Florida State. While I was in college, I worked at the Tampa Bay Times office up there in Tallahassee. I was a secretary, editorial assistant, did all the kind of administrative work. And I thought that was gonna be my career, as going into journalism. And something happened where I just said, you know what, I like to getting in public service. So I kind of shifted gears, finished my degree in political science and English, came to Tampa in '06, didn't know soul. I mean, I went to high school here, but moving to South Tampa after college, you know, it's a whole different world. Plus I'm now in the working world. And so I made some friends and some mentors, just like you had, and they kind of got me involved and got me to think to volunteer. So I was volunteering, and as I was volunteering, I was connecting people, just because I always thought it would be great to pay it forward. You never know what these relationships would come for. And then, of course, unfortunately, the recession hits in '08, and now I'm out of a job. So I'm looking for work, and a friend of mine connected me with someone, and I ended up working at a hotel here, the Westin Hotel. Now, I didn't know anything about hospitality. I didn't know anything about networking, but my job was to be the person, like the brand ambassador in the community, to get local businesses to use our hotel for local events, whether it's banquet space, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and using social media, which again, it's a new thing back in '09, you know. And so a buddy of mine saw what I was doing, saw the value, and just like, you know, I'm sure you've had people that say, you're pretty impressive, why don't you try something else? And he said, why don't you do business development for one of his companies? I said, what does business development mean? And so he said, basically go to events, network, and if you see some value in me connecting them, tell me who I can connect with. And I said, sure. So I started doing that. It worked out great. I got the feel of it. We made a lot of great connections. And then he sold that company. So I was like, okay, now what do I do? So I took about a few months off and talked to about 50 different, I would call them friends, mentors, and advisors. And I said, what do you think I should do? And they all said, Akash, you should start a business. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about starting a business. I don't have an MBA. I've never done this before in my life. You know, I just kind of thought I would, you know, work for somebody most of my career. And then this kind of shift, you know, everyone has that little shift in their life. They didn't think it was going to happen, whether it's COVID or whatever it was. And so the old mayor, you know, our friend Bob Buckhorn, was taking a bunch of folks to Israel. And so I went on this trip to Israel, and we were talking about, Tampa, how it's going to become an up and coming city and a great region, which it is today as we know it. And he said, Akash, a lot of companies are going to be moving here. You should probably get involved in the economic development startup ecosystem that we've got created. And I'm like, what is he talking about? This is 2011. I don't see a lot of people moving here yet, but I'm like, I can see that he's got a passion for this.
Right.
So on the way back from Tel Aviv, I Google how to write a business plan. And I go back and I say, this is what I want to do. I want to connect people, make them meaningful, lasting relationships, and see what comes of it. And so I take that business plan and I hand it to those 50 advisors, friends, and mentors I mentioned earlier. And they all said, Akash, we've never heard of a business like this. And if anyone can do it, you can. So just do it. So that kind of gave me the confidence to start. And I launched February 1, 2012. I haven't looked back.
That's crazy. I love the not only the resilience behind it, but the connecting of the dots and I've always said that if you're able to recognize value where other people are not seeing it, then you're basically creating it.
Right.
And you have been able to create value by just connecting people, connecting causes, connecting movements. What was after you went through the validation stage, what was one of the things that happened that made you feel that you were on the right path?
Well, the thing about the validation, it's hard because the first month I had 3 clients, the second month I had 2 clients, and the third month I had 1 client. I didn't know what I was doing. And people were saying, well, you're 27, you're too young, you couldn't do this. So I kind of looked at the model and I said, well, what am I missing? And I think what it was is people like going to events and like knowing who's going to be in the room and then like someone hand-holding them in this figure of speech matter to introduce them warmly to that person. And so once we started doing that, we started to grow. But yeah, after I got rejected about 100 times plus, I think when I had some clients say to me, you know what, you really have helped transform my business. Thank you for doing this. And I'm thinking, well, you're paying me. This is what I'm supposed to do. Like, no, but there's a lot of people that say something and then don't deliver, which, you see that in business too. And they said, you really go above and beyond. I said, that's how I was taught. When you take someone's word on a commitment to deliver an item, you've got to go above and beyond. And so, yeah, it was an amazing experience. And, and even to this day, we still have that model, learn, connect, and grow.
When you're looking at all of the different players of the ecosystem, you have businesses, you have government, you have community. It almost feels how I've experienced it in my journey is that people often don't see a connecting link between them. They don't fully understand that you need everybody's buy-in if you want to push with an idea, with a change, with a concept, with an initiative. How important is to fully understand the ecosystem that you're trying to impact?
It's extremely important. And the other part of that is people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So when I talk about connections, they're genuine relationships. You know as well as I do that there's sometimes where I say something to a client, say, hey, you should go meet so-and-so. And they push back, like, why do I need to know that kind of industry? I'm like, you never know where it's going to come from. When you walk into a room at a networking event and you know that certain industries that they're going to try to sell you, but you always give them a chance to give them a talk, and vice versa, because you never know who knows who.
Now let's talk about impact, because I think that you can quantify a good connection if it immediately turn into business.
Right.
But there are unquantifiables that you can only see long term. There's a big part of faith that needs to occur in the whole process. How do you see impact in the people that you help, in the people that have been able to make a difference in the community?
Well, many times we're exposing them to the organizations and people they didn't know existed. So we know that once the friendships are formed, in the time we're working with them, they might not get a deal closed. But we know that over time, deals do happen after people stay in touch because they like each other, they see each other, they network with each other after the time they're with Elevate. So what we know, and we hear the feedback saying, wow, this was a great connection. It took fruition a lot later than we thought, but we appreciate the introduction because now we know that we can go to XYZ Corporation for a grant and you get it every year.
And the interesting part of the model is the collaboration between the organizations. I know that one of those organizations that kind of connects us both is
Yeah.
the Chamber of Commerce. And if it hadn't been because of Emerge at that point, that was one of the first for me. Emerge Tampa Bay was the first connection that I ever had with community. I didn't fully understand how community worked. That's when we got paired
Yeah.
through the mentor protege program. How have you seen the community benefit from now all of these programs, 10 years plus in the community, developing, strengthening? How do you see that as an opportunity for us as a community?
Well, I think the most important, like, I mean, I was on the board when, 1 year after we were mentors and you spoke to our board retreat at the chamber. And I remember you telling the story of, I was one of the first people you met and, and we're friends 10 years later, right? And you haven't left Tampa Bay. I haven't left Tampa Bay. We're still here and somehow our worlds can collide again. And if I call you, 3 weeks from now and say, hey, I have a client that wants to meet you, you might say, of course, I'm going to make time for that person. Vice versa. You call me, I'm going to. And so I think the most important part of the community connecting, we're an open community, but then people stay here because people stay here where they want to be welcome. And so when I talk about other cities and you talk about other cities, you got recruited. You got recruited. Once your business started becoming successful, I know 5 other cities that were recruiting you for you to move your operations or your headquarters. But you stayed here because you have a sense of community because you felt, and remember the people at the chamber, the people of the other organizations you're part of that said, hey, we want to help you grow. Here's how you get a loan. Here's how you hire some people. Here's how you help the military. Here's how you volunteer. So I think what it does is for economic development, it's a broad word, but it keeps us here. We're creating better jobs and better people around us.
And how do we keep cultivating that mindset? Because I think that that's one of the challenges that we have because of the nature of the city and sometimes the transient nature of the
Oh
city.
yeah. And we got to keep paying it forward. I mean, we got to keep like, again, I'm a mentor still. I know you're a mentor to many other organizations. I think we have to keep sending the message out that like, if we want to be America's next great city, we have to continue to help other people stay, live and work, play here. But like as you said, it can't be transactional, right? We can't just fight because, oh, we're giving you the most money here. You're going to come here. No, you have to want to be here. So you have to want to get involved.
It feels to a greater or lesser degree counterintuitive
Right.
because we were never necessarily taught that you have to get involved.
Yeah, and then also there's also this thing called ROI, right? In business, you're like, well, I'm going to spend 10 hours. What's my ROI? Sometimes you can spend 10 hours volunteering on a board and get 0 ROI, but you're learning about yourself and you're learning about others, which will later help impact your career.
How did you learn that?
Just staying in touch with people. So I was a big believer in this book called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. So I was 23 years old. I got involved in the community, like I mentioned, was bouncing around jobs, and I got on the board of Voices for Children. So it's a advocacy program for Guardian ad litem. And I didn't know why they asked me on the board, but they said they wanted younger people that have energy, and I had that, right? And so, but the people on the board I stayed in touch with, and the Never Eat Alone concept is grab coffee every month, every other month, every quarter, whenever with someone you don't know, and ask them, what can you be doing? So what books are you reading? Who are people I need to get to know? What organization should I join? Just the simple questions when you're new to a community. But I kept doing that to all the other board members in that room. And now today we're all involved in different organizations together and we see each other and we work well together. I also do Leadership Tampa. I think a lot of people, you talked about it, they do networking organizations and they have the time but I got rejected the first 2 times I applied, right? And my whole point is that you're gonna have to understand, and I got rejected probably because I was too young at the time and probably didn't have the qualifications, right? But I expected that, okay, well, I will get there one day, and I eventually did it. My point is I think that we have to keep trying to raise your hand, take an opportunity, and network within that opportunity, whatever way it is. Just because you're in a committee that's fundraising for a golf tournament doesn't mean after that committee meeting you can't take someone for coffee. People are not too busy for coffee. It might take 6 weeks to schedule, but they'll make that time. And then stay in touch, right? It's all about connectivity. We lost that, right? During that time where we weren't, and during pandemic time, we weren't in front of people. And remember, look how much it matters now. Events are doubling now. There's some nights we have 3 events in a week.
Oh, 100%. Can you teach that? Do you need to have the buy-in first, or can you help people see that reality, because I also feel like it's their choice, right? It's a perspective shift. You either decide that you want to see the world like this, because I agree with what you're saying. I have my own sort of story about community. Where I come from, community, like, we don't build community that way.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out if it's an American thing, if it's a Tampa Bay thing, if it's a mix of both. How can you teach people that the only way that it's going to work out is if you see community sort of like this machine? The machine that the more you feed, the more it's going to give you. That's a concept that you've understood so well.
Yeah. It is hard to teach, but I think it starts at a younger age when you're graduating university or you're going to start a career in Tampa Bay. So I do think it's a Tampa Bay thing. Because I think we have a lot of organizations that are very welcoming, where sometimes if you're in different parts of different major cities and you're from that city, you have to join XYZ. You have to join this country club. You have to join that, whatever it is. Right here, we have several private clubs. They don't really compete. I'm a member of a few of them. I think there's obviously you can't join every one of them because financially it's a lot. But I think what the point of it is that you have different organization chambers of commerce. In this area alone, we have 9 or 10 chambers of commerce. They still survive, so people are joining them. I think what happens is you try small networking, whatever you want to do. You have to get business. You got to put yourself out there. And then you try XYZ and it doesn't work. Then you find out, where do I go next? And then, you do teach people. Say, hey, listen, go recruit folks from this organization. We talked about, the universities. You have USF, you have University of Tampa here, you have Hillsborough College, where I spent time on the board, right? So my point is I think that this is a Tampa Bay thing because of the talent we have here. We are looking to be the next big city, but we have to have these companies know that they can hire the talent here, and this talent need to be involved in the community. So it's a double-edged sword.
Interesting. One of the things that has always caught my attention with your approach is that you're pretty nonsense type of guy. You would approach somebody for a particular objective, mission, like, how you can help that person,
Yeah.
and you're relentless. Is that part of your upbringing? Is that part of the industry that has shaped that business approach that you have to things? What was it?
Yeah, I think clients come to us and say, we're too shy, or we're too worried about ramifications, or we don't know how to approach XYZ. I'm like, just ask. What is the absolute worst that I can say? Well, no, we're not interested in partnering or working with you. Okay, move on. We have this, we have many situations with elected officials where we'll obviously call an elected official. We have clients that are elected officials, and we'll call and say, hey, can you help this person with, like, you know what, we can't take favorites. Okay, no problem. At least I try, right? All you can do is try. And so where it comes from, maybe it's my upbringing, but maybe it's the fact that when I started, no one believed I could do it. I mean, my friends did, my mentors did. But then the first 100 CEOs I went after, in a year and a half plan, they said, we're not hiring you. You're too young, you're too inexperienced, and you don't even know what you're doing, what you're selling. Maybe they were half right, but I'm still here today. And by the way, this town is so small, as you know, that 5, 6 years later, when I started becoming successful and knowing more people, they came back up to us and said, you were right. We're proud of you. We'll hire you now. Right? But I could have just shunned them off and said, no, but we're not like those people, because we know that this town is where everyone will help each other if we help each other.
There's no reason why we should take those things personal.
Right.
There's a desire of keep learning that I know that you have. There's a desire to keep figuring it out. Where do you think the next 5 years are looking for you, for what you're building for this community?
I think, being involved in so much of relocating corporations and helping elected officials through their processes. You keep talking about AI in this, what's a big buzzword right now. I think Tampa does a great job, and the region does a great job, right? We just, had a Super Bowl not too long ago. We had March Madness not too long ago. We had great golf tournaments, and we're getting great sporting events that are internationally putting us on the map, and concerts. We need more big corporations to relocate here, and we need to work as a region to get one of those companies, because if that'll change the dynamics. You think about how Austin changed, how Nashville changed, how Charlotte, some of these industries have changed those cities. So I think through all the connections I've made and all the events and organizations, and I'm on the board of the Economic Development Corporation, all that, the next 5 years for us will be helping grab with that, whatever way it is, whether it's volunteering or connecting or working for or helping an elected official, attracting one of those corporations here. And I'm talking huge ones. That's going to impact a lot of lifestyle jobs, a lot of education institutions, because we're ready, right? Before they said we already have the greatest airport in the world, right? We have definitely the best infrastructure for quality of life, which the beaches are right there, and then of course you can drive to Orlando if you want with family, whatever. So I think we just haven't had it yet, and I think that's what we're missing.
Is there collectively with all the people that you're working, is there sort of like a short list of companies that you're actively approaching? Is it one of those things where let's build the garden and then the butterflies will come? What's the approach that you're seeing? Because what makes your position very interesting is that not a lot of people understand the business side as well as the policy side and how to leverage both of them.
Right.
Some folks are very business driven, some folks are very policy and lobbying driven, but connecting the dots and seeing how they work long term is not something that common. So, how do you stay not only proactive instead of reactive, guiding that conversation, but do you feel like we're doing enough? Do you feel like there's always more to do? What's your,
I think we can always do better. I think the issue we have, of course, in the politics of the world is the people change, right? Every 8 years or every 4 years, people change. So I think what we have to get is all the elected officials in line to this mission, but we're getting there. I mean, look at what's going on with baseball, with the Rays potentially coming to the Tampa Bay area. I think we're getting there. And also there's not much left to do. Before we wanted, you know, highway jobs, we're getting highway jobs. Before we wanted a vibrant downtown, we've got a couple of vibrant downtowns. Before we wanted a baseball team in this area, we have a baseball team, right? We had a great airport. We have a lot. Of course, people always complain about education, right? We got great universities here. People forget. The USF is one of the top, 5 in the state at least. Our community college, HCC, is phenomenal, third largest in the state. So we are getting there, and we finally. It's taken a long time, but I think this is the point where we have to. We are the destination. We just have to work hard at it.
that's going to be the catalyst for the next phase of growth?
Yeah, and companies like mine will grow with it, right? And yours too. I mean, the more people we have here, the more recycling is going to get done for your business, right?
100%.
And I think that's the thing is we need it and we're ready for it. And by the way, if it doesn't happen, we'll still do fine because we've already done the whole legwork. But as far as the next 5 years, we have to keep growing.
Hmm. I the necessity for growth is definitely something that's very characteristic of this country to sustain the model. How do you feel that your business model is also going to evolve as the community evolves?
I think it's, our pricing is average. I think we can raise our prices at some point, but I haven't changed my prices in years. I like working with all sorts of types of corporations and nonprofits. I think that's going to have to evolve because I'll have more competition. I mean, we already have competition, which is great. I welcome competition in any business because it keeps me on my toes, right? And I also think, again, the industry we're in, which is somewhat political, somewhat, community relations, there's more boards, there's more organizations, there's more events, there's more nonprofits. So on a gala where I might have 3 nonprofit clients and I have 2 galas, they might be on the same night now because that's the only way they can book them, right? So in a good way, right, there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of other people to enter the space. And I welcome it. And I also think the point of it is that also you'll see a lot of you'll see a lot of in the next few years, a lot of AI getting involved in some of these organizations and consolidating these big groups too, right? Because we don't need 10 chambers of commerce, but you might need 1 or 2 venues and straight strategy on every, or even the private clubs. So I think we're finding that and because you're seeing the speakers that all these places do on the circuit. So now you have a circuit. And how do you get on the circuit now? Sorry. So I think it's an interesting world we're in now. But I think over the next few years with our business, we'll probably raise prices and stay true to our area, our region.
Do you think, well, you brought something important, which is the region. And that was going to be my next question is in terms of how we're seeing the region evolve, do you think that there's still plenty to do and to build in the area? Or do you feel like, Orlando, East, the Tampa Bay area as a whole, Sarasota, up in Pasco, do you feel like that's also, part of the scope for what's coming?
No, there's definitely plenty to do in this region, especially Sarasota area. We were in the University Town Center when we did the Help City Furniture with their grand opening, and Lakewood Ranch has a great business alliance there. There's a couple of Minnesota chambers, a couple other things in Sarasota. I think that area is just getting more younger, which again, it's more entrepreneurial, it's more tech, which is helping us grow here because we need to get some of those spin-offs. They're gonna have Sarasota and Tampa offices. And what's funny is it's a lot farther than St. Pete, right?
Yeah.
But people used to think St. Pete and Tampa work well together, and we still do. But now you get to split. You get some choices, and then of course Orlando is going to be, that's tourism driven. Everyone goes there for the tourism parks, and it's great. How do we get a piece of that on this side of the bridge? And then I-4. I-4 is a connector, but it's a busy connector, right? And you got Lakeland in between, and Lakeland's got Florida Poly. What they're doing at Florida Poly is amazing over there. So I think you're going to see all these pieces connect through education and political relationships.
That's what you're seeing right now.
And then growing. We're going to grow together. And, all depends on if they just want to work together, but I think they will.
It feels like the climate, and I know that we're sort of riding also the growth of what was planned 10, 15 years ago, but it feels like there's plenty of bandwidth to keep growing in the area.
Yeah, there is, and it's good for everyone. It's good because it kind of, you're not siloed, you're connected, right?
Right. Okay, so how do we start getting people involved? You mentioned something that was key, which is when you're starting to get to college, or when you're either about to get to college or graduating from college, that's the sweet spot to start connecting with the community, start identifying your own definition of purpose. But there's a whole bunch of people that were not taught that at that time.
Yeah.
And now they're sort of stuck in between, well, what am I supposed to do now? So should I keep growing? Should I maybe move on to a vertical? Should I even switch industries? Because like you're saying, you have the nonprofit sector very, very active in the area. You have the business sector active in the area. You have policy, which sits very interestingly because they can benefit drastically both. But you also have the necessity of people working more together. So for the folks that are listening, how can they start getting involved? How can they make that shift?
Raise your hand. I think if you raise your hand and talk to a mentor, first of all, simply put, ask someone you don't know for coffee and just say, hey, I just want to learn how, or someone you know who's successful and established in the career, and say, hey, I just want to learn from you. What can I do? Simple things. What organization really helped you evolve, and what book are you reading? Simple, small stuff. Something that's not going to take a lot of, heavy lifting, right? They can just tell you about an organization, maybe make one connection for you. And then volunteer. I think every organization in town will say yes to volunteer. And I think every nonprofit, whether it's a religious affiliation or not, will want someone to get involved, and then you don't know who you're going to meet through that process. So it is hard to tell someone who's young, who has not a lot of time and wants to do other things besides volunteer, to say volunteer. But I think that's what I'm saying. You got to pay it forward, and you got to raise your hand. If you don't raise your hand, no one's going to know you want any help.
That's one of the things that for me was changed my perspective. And it actually came from Senator Scott when he said, if you don't like the way things are done in your community, run for office.
Yep.
And change them. But sometimes our own ignorance doesn't let us see past that wall that sometimes we put ourselves. I know for a fact that when you're brought up in a different country, things don't work the same way. You don't just change things because there's no system, there's no infrastructure.
Right.
But there is one here, and you can make a difference. And I remember that. I still remember one of the first things that you told me on that first meeting that we ever had was, do you have a board?
Yeah.
And I remember saying, what do you mean, do I have a board? I just started this company. I have no idea what the heck I'm doing. And you said, no, go out go. I think what you said was, go out and put a list of 50 people and think of, if you had to ask $1,000 or $2,000 from these 50 people, who would say yes to it?
And they can ask you questions. That was the key.
and they can't ask you a question.
Right. So you said I need $1,000. They can't ask you what it's for.
Boom.
They trust you enough that you're not going to waste it on anything meaningless.
Right. And that's still the case.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed. It's so basic,
Right.
but it's so hard. So that's a great call to action for sure. Put it out there.
And Senator Scott, you said when he was governor, similar conversation. He spoke at an event I was at. It was for a Chamber of Commerce. I didn't know he was. I mean, he became governor, so he just kind of liked it. It was probably the same month he got inaugurated. And he said, I have an opportunity to appoint many people to boards. So I raised my hand. I applied to be on one of the boards, and I'm still the chair of that position today. And every time I see him, and just like you, he remembers you, of course. And he remembers me. He's like, you remember that time you asked, and you're still serving. So he said, be careful what you ask for. I said, no, it's been a great learning experience.
Yes.
But if I didn't raise my hand, obviously I challenged him at the time because, he probably speaks to a lot of people and says, well, you want to volunteer, go ahead. And then I said, I applied. And he interviewed me and I got to the position. But I think that's what people need to do. You talked about what people do. I mean, in your local organizations, besides organizations, your local government, your city council, your mayor's office, your housing authorities, your state offices, your governor's offices, they have civic boards for leaders to be appointed to. Raise your hand. Sometimes on the local county boards, they don't have enough people that apply. That's how I got started. I was on a citizens advisory board for Hillsborough County, again, when I was 25 years old. And that same person, the commissioner that appointed me then, is now my current customer. Full circle.
Nurturing relationships.
Yeah, but raising your hand and just saying, hey, I want to help. What can I do? Call the office. Call your congressperson. Hey, I want to get on the board. What can you recommend me on? Everyone has a congressperson.
That is so simple. How many people actually do it?
Yeah. And but the question is going to be, well, what's in it for me, right?
Right.
But I think that's the point, is you have to go in there with, I'm going to learn a lot. No matter what you're going to do, you're going to learn a lot. And then it's what do you do with that information? And that's where you have mentors to kind of guide you through that.
Very cool. I know that was a culture shock for me when I started. Drastic culture shock. But that's how community works. And that's how you're also reinforcing the way that community should work.
Yeah.
And I bet that even successful business people that you get to see on a daily basis, they didn't even know that the system worked like that, which is mind-blowing to me. We don't even know civics.
Yeah, and I think it's like you too. I remember you were on the board of Nova Southeastern's regional campus, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, did you go there? No, I didn't go there. What's the connection? You're like, I just want to help. Yeah. And someone knew you wanted to help, and you helped.
Yeah. I think we're going through a collective understanding that we will benefit if the ones around us are benefiting too.
Right.
Which, again, sounds extremely counterintuitive to the way that the systems have been built. And we're starting to realize that if we want to solve problems, it's sort of our responsibility to do it on our own, not to wait for another institution to figure it out for us.
Yep.
Akash, to close up this awesome interview, what is one thing that makes you proud of being here, being from Tampa? What is one thing that you're proud about calling Tampa Bay your home?
I think I'm very proud because it's a very open community where it doesn't matter your skin color, your race, your gender, whatever you feel like, you can get involved and make a difference. And I tell people that all the time. Other cities, they might not take how young you are, whatever you look like, whatever your differences are, they might not want you at the table. Here, we not only want you at the table, we encourage you to find more people to get to the table.
That is true. If you have value, if you have something to bring, you're always going to be welcome here. Akash, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you so much. It's so great to see you grow, and excited to be part of your life, man. It's in your journey.
We're only getting started, brother.
I know, man. It's good to see you, Tony. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Remember, if you liked our content, hit that subscribe button, find out more about what we're doing here, the Digital Education Foundation, and E-Revolutionary, the podcast. Thank you for watching.